guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. There have been quite a few drugstore sunscreen launches lately, and I feel like it's been a while since we've seen new/exciting sunscreens hit the shelves at the drugstore. So obviously, as a sunscreen lover and a sunscreen reviewer, I needed to pick up all of the new sunscreens that I was seeing so that I could test them out, apply them, get footage for you guys, and let you know my thoughts so that you can figure out if any of these sunscreens will be worth the purchase for you. And we have a good little mixture of sunscreens going on here. Some are tinted, some are untinted, some are mineral, some are chemical, some are combination. We have a stick in the mix. I'm looking down here because they're sitting in a pile right here in front of me, and I just can't wait to dive into it. So without further ado, let's jump into this sunscreen review. First up is the CeraVe Hydrating Sheer Sunscreen for the face and body with broad spectrum SPF 30. This is a hybrid or combination sunscreen, so the active ingredients are homosalate, octisalate, octocrylene, and zinc oxide. This also has a lot of really nice inactive ingredients worth mentioning, including things like niacinamide, ceramides, hyaluronic acid, and cholesterol. Plus, it is fragrance and essential oil free. This is a very liquidy sunscreen that feels super silky to the touch. I was really excited when I first squeezed it out of the bottle and started to apply it to my skin because I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of an Asian sunscreen where it just has that nice, lightweight, silky feel. Guys, I feel like there's a hair stuck in my makeup. You know what I mean? When you just like feel like there's a hair there, but there isn't. It's driving me nuts. For the most part, I don't have any issues when I'm applying this and it blends into my skin really nicely, but I have noticed that if I'm wearing a bit of a creamier, thicker moisturizer underneath this, I can get some pilling, especially around my eye area and around my nose. It's nothing major and it's not like my entire face of skincare starts to pill off, but if you do have dry skin, this may not work the best for you because if you want to use a really thick moisturizer, you may have some issues with layering here. But what I really love about this sunscreen is that even though it's super lightweight, it also feels very moisturizing. So for me personally, I don't need to wear a moisturizer underneath it. If you have normal to oily skin like me, then you may find this to be moisturizing enough by itself so that you don't even need to wear moisturizer under it and you don't have to worry about layering or pilling or anything like that. Otherwise, it still does layer nicely on top of a bit of a lighter weight moisturizer, but that's why I think it may be potentially an issue for you if you have super, super dry skin. Otherwise, I feel like all around works great. This is one of those sunscreens that on my skin appears to have a white cast initially, but when you give it about 10 minutes to absorb into the skin, the white cast does disappear. So on my skin tone, this does not leave a white cast, except for the fact that I did notice a little bit of a remaining white residue around my hairline. That can often happen with sunscreens that contain zinc oxide because they'll just kind of like stick to my hair. So it's more of an issue with how I'm applying it, I guess. Well, maybe not, because I still want to be protecting up to my hairline, but that is just something that I noticed. It's definitely not a major issue, but I have to be really nitpicky for you guys with reviews. So I would be curious to know, for those of you that do have a deeper skin tone than me, which is going to be about 90% of the population, 99%, let's be honest, I'm pasty. I'd be curious to know if the white cast fully absorbs on you as well, or if there is a little bit of a remaining cast. Let us know in the comments below if you do have a deep to dark skin tone, how this works on you, if you've tried it. Otherwise, yeah, no cast issues for me, and the finish is really, really nice and glowy. I would say it gives me a nice healthy glow, but it's not shiny at all. So something I'm really enjoying. The only issue I have with it is the fact that it's an SPF 30 and not an SPF 50. I would love, love, love to see this exact same kind of sunscreen in an SPF 50, and then I feel like I would reach for this all the time. It really is so nice, and is it my favorite CeraVe sunscreen to date? It's been a while since I've tried their, what's it called? The like long skinny sunscreen that has a pump on it. Oh my gosh. If I'm remembering correctly, that one definitely has more of like a dry touch feel and is not as moisturizing as this one. That one's really nice too, but again, this is more of that like Asian sunscreen vibe, which I love. Sometimes I shock myself with how long I can talk about one single sunscreen. Like, to me, there are so many different things to consider. I'm sure people that are not super into sunscreen are like, dude, get to the point. But if you love sunscreen like me, you know there there are important factors to consider. Okay, anyway, let's move on to sunscreen number 2, which is the Neutrogena Pure Screen Mineral UV Tint Face Liquid with Broad Spectrum SPF 30. I did talk about this in my last What's New at the Drugstore video, so I will list that below if you haven't seen that yet, but I felt like it would be incomplete to not include this in this video as well, given that this is a new drugstore sunscreen launch that so many people have been interested in. And since I am also going to be reviewing the new Eucerin tinted sunscreen, I thought it would be helpful to include this again so that you guys can hear how these compare and see how they compare on my skin as well. This sunscreen has mineral filters, including titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. Inactive ingredients worth mentioning are vitamin E and iron oxides, and this is fragrance and essential oil free. I've had a lot of questions on short form videos where I'm reviewing new sunscreen as to whether or not a sunscreen is comedogenic and going to cause breakouts. This one does have isopropyl palmitate as the 5th ingredient, which by itself is a comedogenic ingredient, but that's the only comedogenic ingredient in this product. So FYI, if you're incredibly acne prone, hair everywhere. Of course, just the presence of one comedogenic ingredient is not going to be a guarantee that a product will cause you to break out. I personally haven't had any issues with that with this product, but I just wanted to mention that given all of the questions I've gotten. What I find to be most exciting about this sunscreen is definitely the fact that it's available in 4 different shades. That is basically unheard of at the drugstore and unheard of with a lot of other sunscreen brands, even those that are much more expensive. For a lot of tinted sunscreens that are out there, we typically will only get 1 shade. So I do want to highlight the fact that they at least have 4 different shades available. Even though that still isn't enough, it's much better than just one. I would say that this has a pretty nice neutral undertone. There is a little bit of pink that picks up on my hand, but when I blend this into my skin, I don't notice it looking pink. I do have a neutral undertone when I am fair-skinned like this, so just for reference, but it's definitely not going to be something that looks orange on your skin, which is great. Similar to CeraVe, this is also a liquidy sunscreen that feels moisturizing, but I would say it's a little bit less wet in feel than CeraVe. It's kind of more maybe like velvety. I don't like to use this by itself as my sole means of sun protection. Number 1, because it's only an SPF 30, but number 2, because if I apply 2 layers of this, it definitely just feels a little bit too heavy and greasy. But with a little bit of product and used more as like a tinted topper for an untinted sunscreen, then I think it feels nice. It's not too heavy, and again, it's moisturizing. Not going to be something that feels completely weightless if that's what you're after, but overall, I think that this is a great option for a drugstore tinted sunscreen. Unless you're somebody that's looking for a tinted sunscreen that gives a lot of coverage to completely replace makeup. In that case, I don't think that you'll love this because this has more sheer coverage on me. I think it's really pretty, but again, it's just not something that gives much coverage if that's what you need. And the finish of this is also nice and glowy without looking shiny or greasy. So again, I think it's a great option for a drugstore tinted sunscreen and something we have been needing from the drugstore for a long, long time. I hope to see more shades from them and other brands. Next up is the Eucerin Oil Control Sunscreen with Broad Spectrum SPF 50. This is a chemical sunscreen and the active ingredients are avobenzone, homosalate, octisalate, and octocrylene. The inactive ingredients worth highlighting are licorice root, vitamin E, vitamin C, and it's fragrance and essential oil free. The texture of this is almost slightly whipped. It's definitely a little bit thicker and creamier than CeraVe. It feels really moisturizing, but when I think about the fact that this is marketed as an oil control sunscreen with oil absorbing minerals, which is obviously something marketed towards those with oily skin, I will say that the texture of it surprised me a little bit because it's not as lightweight as I was expecting. It still feels nice. It's not like it's a gross, thick, heavy cream by any means, but if you have super oily skin, I don't think that you'll love the texture of this, given that it is creamier and thicker. No issues applying this though. It feels nice and soft and blends in easily, and the finish on my skin, I would say, leans glowy, which also kind of surprised me. Again, I think just because of the fact that this was marketed towards oily skin types, I was expecting this to have more of like a natural to matte finish, and it definitely doesn't. But I will say, compared to the hydrating sunscreen that they launched about this time last year, it's significantly less dewy than that. That product will not work if you have super oily skin. That is definitely more of a finish for dry skin types. So this is better than that, but I don't know that you'll love this product if you have super oily skin. I think that there are other sunscreens that you would definitely enjoy more than this, but that doesn't mean it's a bad sunscreen. I do think a lot of you would really enjoy this if you're looking for something that feels moisturizing, but once it dries down, doesn't feel too heavy on the skin. Next up is the Eucerin Sensitive Mineral Face Tinted Sunscreen Lotion with broad spectrum SPF 35. This is a mineral sunscreen, and the only active ingredient is zinc oxide. In terms of an active ingredients worth highlighting, this has licorice root, vitamin E, vitamin C, and jojoba oil, and is also fragrance and essential oil free. If you're acne prone, the third ingredient in this sunscreen is isopropyl palmitate, which is a comedogenic ingredient, just an FYI. Again, not a guarantee that this will break you out. Do you guys hear her barking? Aww. When it's him and mommy's video. Okay, good, yeah. I would consider this tint to be light to medium and warm in undertone, so it's definitely too dark and too warm for my natural skin, meaning this is not a blendable tint for all skin tones. If you have a skin tone similar to mine or you're more fair than me, this is not gonna work. And I would venture to guess that this is not gonna work on super deep to dark skin tones either, because like, what? However, I do feel like this would probably be a nice match for me when I have self-tanner on and I'm trying to match my face to the rest of my body. Similar to the other Eucerin sunscreen, this one is also slightly like whipped in feel and creamier and more moisturizing. Definitely not something that is super white. No, well, it's definitely not super white, but it's not something that is super lightweight or weightless in feel on the skin. No issues with blending this one for me, aside from the fact that this doesn't blend in with my skin tone. So of course you can see like a harsh line where I have the tinted sunscreen and then I have my natural skin tone. I end up with sheer coverage when I apply one layer of this. It is something that you could build up a little bit more with more applications than that, but again, then you're gonna run into the issue of it feeling a little bit heavy, so probably not going to be your best bet if you're looking for something with more coverage, but otherwise, gives you a nice little wash of color and a glowy finish. So I'm definitely excited to be seeing more tinted sunscreen launches at the drugstore, but I would love to see more shades and some options that are just a bit lighter weight and not as creamy. I do definitely think that this one feels creamier and thicker than the Neutrogena option, but yeah, lighter weight than this would be divine, knowing that it's the last step in our skincare routine. Most of us are not looking to pack on a lot of product. Not that this feels like you're sitting in pounds of product, but again, you guys know I'm really nitpicky. Like, I wanna see all of my favorite Asian sunscreens in a tinted version, you know? Like that level of lightweight. A girl can dream. Second to last is the Neutrogena Pure Screen Mineral Ultra Sheer Dry Touch Lotion with broad spectrum SPF 30. This is a mineral sunscreen containing zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, and the only inactive ingredient worth mentioning is vitamin E, but it is fragrance and essential oil free. I definitely agree with the fact that this has more of a dry touch feel. It's something that at first looks like it's going to be really thick and heavy, but as you start to blend it into the skin, it kind of thins out and feels nice. It's not completely weightless by any means, but it definitely does have that nice soft dry touch. When I first applied this, I was like, absolutely no way, because it looks like it has such an intense white cast, or I guess it doesn't look like it does. It does have such an intense white cast at first, but on my skin, a lot of that did actually absorb once I let it dry down for a few minutes. So I would say that there is still a little bit of a white cast apparent on my skin. Hello. Okay. I wouldn't say it's completely white cast free, and if you have a darker skin tone than me, it probably would show up quite a bit more, but it's not one of those mineral sunscreens that's like, oh my gosh, you have whiteout all over your face. I mean, at first it was, but not once it dried down. And this one does end up giving me more of just a natural finish, where it's not really enhancing the glow of my skin, but it's not making my skin look matte. It's just nice and in between, which I really like and feel is difficult to find in a sunscreen, especially at the drugstore. So if you are looking for a completely mineral sunscreen and you're okay with the fact that this is an SPF 30 and not an SPF 50, and you have a really fair to really light complexion where you don't have to worry as much about this white cast, then I think that this would be a good option. Otherwise, I feel like it's like almost there, but not quite. You're such a good girl. Sometimes. Not all the time lately, because you're acting like a teenager. And last is the Cooler Refreshing Water Hydration Stick Sunscreen with Broad Spectrum SPF 50. This is a chemical sunscreen. The active ingredients are avobenzone, homosalate, octisalate, and octocrylene. And this actually has quite a few nice inactive ingredients like aloe juice, safflower oleosomes, sorbitol olivate, coconut water, cacao extract, jojoba oil, and hyaluronic acid. However, it does have some essential oil extracts in it like jasmine, neem, and basil, but no just like pure essential oils, which is good since those tend to be more irritating. And it does have added fragrance, but that added fragrance is last on the label. I will be totally honest, I am usually not a sunscreen stick girl for my entire face. There's just something about it that grosses me out. But I do think that sunscreen sticks can be really nice around the eyes, and I wanted to test it out all over my face for you guys for the sake of this video. I have to tell you guys that this absolutely has a really refreshing feel. Super hydrating. It feels cooling in a way, but not because it's like minty and tingly cooling. It's just that refreshing that there's like something cooling about this. I don't know, it's really nice. When I was applying this to my skin and trying to make sure that I had enough product on my skin so that it was adequately covered, I found that it kind of like bunched in some areas where I did need to end up using my fingers to fully blend it in. It wasn't a big issue at all, and once I did that, it blended in great, but this wasn't like a completely hands-free process for me for that purpose. Once this is fully blended in, it is a sunscreen that you can feel on the skin a little bit. I feel like there's almost a tiny bit of a sticky residue, like a little bit of a film almost, but it's not something I hated because of the fact that it felt nice and refreshing. And I really liked the finish on my skin, which definitely just leaned more in the middle and more natural. So I think that this is a really nice option for around the eyes. It's not something that I would personally ever use all over my face again, but around the eyes and on the backs of the hands, on your neck, anything like that, I actually think that this is a great option. And with that, we have reviewed all of the new drugstore sunscreens that I wanted to review for this video, so we're going to wrap it up here. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you tried any of these? Are you going to try any after watching this video? As always, they will all be listed and linked in my description box in order of mention. The last dang hair. Oh, there really was a hair this time. And if you enjoyed the video, you know the drill. Please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, click on that notification bell, and send my channel to a friend. Thank you so much for doing those things. Your support means the world. Thank you for watching my videos. I love the freaking heck out of you guys. Make sure to stay tuned for my next one because that will be up in a few days. But until then, I need to go get my barking dog. Good. I hope you have a great few days.